Okay, so I'm gonna predict all of 6.0, and this is how I'm gonna do it. So basically, Genshin's developed a pattern through 4.0 and 5.0 that we can very clearly see that they're just gonna replicate in 6.0. The only thing that could change this is if we get, another, more 5 stars, basically. We would need to get more 5 stars in 6.0 entirely, so yeah. Which I don't think is out of the question, if you ask me, honestly. Okay, so let's start off with the first update of the series, is we got Lyney, and then we got Kinich and Mulani. Now, stay with me here, because that's 2 5 stars. Oh, why happened that? That's because they just switched it around, because 5.1 brought Shielonen, which was 1 5 star, and Wriothesley and Nevi were 2 5 stars. So yeah, so let's talk about Wriothesley and Lyney, because these two will correlate to Mulani and Kinich. Lyney is still, probably the 3rd best pyro DPS behind Arlecchino and Mavuika, right? Those 2 characters, they're above him, but I think he is probably the 3rd best. I don't have him, but from what the Lyney Glazers love to say is that, he's very good. Now, here is where something, happens where, I compare characters with their C1 or their R1. So with Kinich, I would compare with his weapon. With Wriothesley, I would compare with his, C1, which Wriothesley, Melt Team's C1, Vape Melt on him was actually pretty good. So, yeah, not bad. And then, we look at Kinich, and he's pretty good, not bad. But you cannot say that they are, one of the best DPSs in the game. You can do the 5th hit with Kinich and stuff. You can do all that technique. But for the average player, this character is nowhere near as high on a tier list as a character like, Nevi, Arlecchino, Mavuika, right? He's not at that level. Whereas Mulani, she can show up and, hit that level depending on your luck, I would say. Because from what I hear, she has targeting issues. But we can then go ahead and we can look at the Shielonen character. Now, why is this the Shielonen character? Well, this is because he's the Archon support. This isn't a DPS, this is the Archon support. And what I mean by that is that Fiorina desperately, not desperately, let's be real, she would have worked very fine, but she needed a DPS, right? We can look at this with Alhaitham too. Alhaitham was our first case of the Archon support. If the Archon is a support, they need someone to be the best DPS they can be, and that be their best team, right? They need Fiorina to be, on Nevi's best team. Alhaitham needed Nahida to be on his best team, right? Nahida was very crucial to Alhaitham from what I hear on, the Alhaitham mains, right? And then we can go ahead and we can look at Shielonen. Now, Shielonen, she's a support character. What? No, well, that's completely wrong, because they're DPSs. But no, I would say, honestly, Shielonen just adds to the consistency of Mavuika. Now, the issue arises when we have Seatlali. Now, Seatlali is a character who is just really, tuned for Mavuika, right? And there is 2 methods. You can either consider Shielonen the Archon support because she releases before the Archon, there we go, or you can consider Seatlali. Either way, you swap one of those characters for Sinyun. We're stepping ahead above Navia for a quick second. Sinyun is a character who buffed older characters, who made older characters easier to use, stepped them up, and she really did pair well with the Archon, but not necessarily pairing well with the Archon like, Nevi did, where it was almost a 1-to-1 great example. So, a character that pairs very well with the Archon, supports a lot of characters, brought back some characters, double Hydro Hutao was a lot better now. We're talking about things like this, Shielonen effectively did that. So, we could look at that and be like, we're going to get one of these. So, the Archon is going to have 2 sort of characters that she well, I guess we can't say the Archon because there's not going to be an Archon in 6.0. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, Sinyun, I think, would either fit with Shielonen or Seatlali, depending on whichever one you want to talk about. Personally, if I was to actually, talk about which one I think is, more Nevi-like, I would say Seatlali, absolutely, because Seatlali does feel like a 1-to-1 support for Mavuika. Now, we can go ahead and we can talk about Chaska and Navia. Now, Navia, a lot better than Chaska, right? We just say that right now. However, Chaska was a DPS that we sort of just released on their own, right? They just released on their own. It was after we had, built up for the Archon, right? Chaska, not after we built up for the Archon, because the Archon came in update later, right? Sadly, that's what happened. So these characters, what they have in common is that they were kind of outside of the box, if we're being entirely honest, right? Chaska, she just didn't really, she was so weird and her kit is so different that it made her a lot worse. However, Navia, not so much, right? Navia, she worked out very, very well and, worked very well with, a shield. I don't remember her exact best team, but if I were to just say, oh, Shangling, Bennett, Fiorina, right? That wouldn't be, I assume that would be a correct team to use for her, right? So yeah, Chaska here is sort of that same idea, right? She sort of was, oh, she's very, out of the ordinary, not really, stretching out to be super great. That's just kind of how it happened. So I don't see this as like a guaranteed thing, but I definitely do think that, it's very common for them now to just sort of introduce, oh yeah, DPS, we've had it now twice in a row where they just introduce a DPS that kind of you wouldn't have expected. Now, we've already talked about Senyun and how, she's sort of a reflection of Shilonen. Now we can talk about Shiori. Now, who would she be a reflection of? Mizuki. The reason why I say this is because both of these characters were primarily dominant for off-field damage. They really, in different ways, obviously. But one thing they have in common is that they were pretty mid. This is sort of a down period of Genshin right before they release a very strong character. Now, again, this was technically Verissa. We'll talk about Verissa now, just because we don't really have Arlecchino's replacement right now. Verissa, very good, very strong, number 3 DPS in the game. Chloride, from what I remember, I wasn't that high on her. But then again, I didn't have C6 Chevy. And judging by the way that this character has aged, yeah, I'm not, yeah. She obviously doesn't need Shangling anymore, which is a huge improvement onto her teams. I would definitely say Chloride was very, very good when she dropped, and obviously I'd say the same thing about Verissa. Obviously Verissa's way better than Chloride, but Verissa's also, number 3 DPS in the game, and a year later. Now we can talk about, possibly where we veer off, because now we have Sigewinne and Miss Coffee. One of these characters is slightly better than the other. Yeah, it's not even close. Sigewinne is awful. Genuinely, there's not a single best in slot team for this character. She's pretty awful. She's not even a dedicated support because she doesn't, there's nothing to it. These characters are, I can't make a connection between these characters, right? There's a difference between every other character here, coincidentally, Chaska and Navia, very standalone DPSs that came in through the story out of nowhere. Chaska was kind of there from the beginning, but she always kind of felt like she didn't really get any screen time until her version update, so yeah. And yeah, Sigewinne and Miss Coffee, there's no connection I can make between these characters. There just isn't. I don't see one. And yeah, the best I could say, and the reason for that being is most likely because of Skirk. And it's very possible what they've decided to do is give Harbingers their Archon supports, right? So if a Harbinger is a support, there could be a really broken DPS coming. If a Harbinger is a DPS, there could be a really broken support coming for them to make them really, really good. As simple as that. I think that is what they've decided to do. It's, it's possible that's not how it plays out. Obviously, this is a new thing that they've done. But I do think that's very possible that's what they did. And they're going to do again. And now we can talk about the main thing we can talk about. Skirk and Arlecchino. And yeah, it's very, very clear that when Genshin goes through an update, they don't, like, these middling releases, right? These, Mulani Kanich, right? They're good to set a new standard. But it is not at all going to compare to the Archon or the Harbinger. You look at, Nevi and Arlecchino, and you look at every other character in 4.0, no DPS was even coming close. These two characters, if you had them on your account, you were clearing Abyss no matter what, right? If you have Mavuika and Skirk, even C0R0 probably on your account. I don't know, I've been whaled and messed up. But if you have them, you're probably still clearing Stygian very easily. I would be very confident to say that we're going to end up having characters like, Skirk and Mavuika again, right? There are going to be two main lore-relevant characters, whether it's Alice and someone else. I don't know who else it would be. Maybe that one guy with half his face covered. I don't know. I don't know lore, man. I don't. So yeah, we have that. But let's go back to Verissa role. Stygian. It needs 3 teams. Ever wondered why Verissa was so strong? Yeah, I would wager to say Verissa's so strong because they realized we kind of need 3 characters to be that level. So I think Verissa's spot, Versa, along with Chloride's spot, will be a third strongest DPS in the game. And that will be a trifecta of DPSs that will dominate the game and clear everything in the game. Could I be wrong? Obviously. But we have to remember, Genshin made the new hardest content require 3 characters. They can't just release Mizuki every single, update, right? If they do that, Stygian's not going to be beatable, right? Because they're going to increase the HP because the new hardest hitting character is insane, right? And don't forget about Emily. Emily will be the character that Enefa is, and, the same thing goes for what Yelan was, although Yelan, you really want to look at Kuki for that. Kuki was really the character that dropped and was like, oh, she's the character that was leading to Dendro. And then if we go ahead and we look at Kazuha, oh, he dominated the game until 3.0. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. He only dominated the game the entire version before he released, right? Or version after he released, right? Yeah. So we're going to see a character like Emily, and that is Enefa for 5.0. And we're going to see a character for 6.0 that is going to be like Emily and Enefa. They're just going to advertise the next region, be better for the next region, how Emily was better for Kinich. It's just whoever they tie it to. It doesn't even have to be tied to anybody, right? Again, legitimately, we've had Yelan, we've had Kuki, we had Kazuha. Kazuha was for everyone. This would be our Archon level support, but Kujisara exists. So that's kind of where we're at, So yeah, as it stands right now, I'm expecting the Archon 2 dedicated supports for the Archon, a Harbinger, and then a dedicated support for the Harbinger. And then also, we're probably going to see a very strong third option DPS who will probably carry us through Stygian if you have all 3 of those DPSs along with their supports. Now, we have our introductory characters who, they'll be DPSs, whatever. Maybe the Dendro Deer Lady is going to be one of them. We'll see. Could be support, could be DPS. It's very possible, that they are, well, let's be real. If we look at literally every single start of an update, it's always DPSs every single time. So maybe not. Maybe not, because to be fair, if we think about it logically for why Genshin does DPSs every single time there's a new mega version update, it's most likely because they have new players joining. They know that, and they're like, well, we need to sell them a DPS, otherwise they're going to be using a support that supports nobody. So sell a DPS, they get a DPS, then everyone's happy, right? That's my thought process behind it. So I would definitely say we're probably going to get 2 DPSs in the form of either 5.1 or 6.1 and 6.0 between those 2, and then we'll get a support for Archon, or maybe a DPS for the Archon. We'll see. And then after that, standalone DPS, then probably a mid support. They have a very good cycle of releasing a mid support during the version update. We have Dea here, and then we also have who would be the mid support for 2.0? I guess like Kokomi is what's coming to mind. Miko, I guess. Yeah, probably. Because she really didn't pop off until Jinjo came out. She really didn't. And then 1.0 was all DPSs, and the one support they released was literally generational. So I don't know if we can go that far back. But yeah, they have a track record of releasing some mid supports during the, series updates. And yeah, I expect Mizuki level support or something, or Mizuki Chiori, whichever one, mid support, throw them out. And then obviously we have our dedicated support for, the next version. I think that covers all of them. Overall, I am thinking that that's the formula for Genshin Impact so far. It doesn't seem like they're going to break it. Although, again, we don't have an Archon this update. It could be very possible that we go through all of 6.0 and Mavuika stays the strongest because there's no Archon. Do I think that's actually going to happen? No. I think, I can't think of the character. It's possible Chio Irina lady, whoever comes out, is stronger than Mavuika. It is very possible. It's very likely. If I'm being entirely honest, this is a gacha game. They're going to do power creep. It's going to happen. Probably going to happen. Mavuika's not going to be the strongest very, very soon. I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I really hope that we don't see, Mavuika's now way worse than, the 5 or 6.0 characters, right? I definitely hope we don't see that. I definitely think that Genshin has a habit of releasing certain types of characters for certain things. And yeah, this is you know, the idea. Now I haven't predicted the 4 stars because I mean, if we're being entirely honest, 4 stars are literally all a wild card. I mean, they released one of the best DPSs in the game, yeah, right, as a 4-star. So I don't expect gaming. Yeah, and then Auroron too, who was very promising until Lunar Charge came out, and it's like, oh well, Inefa just applies Electro, and it's like, why did we have this character? Why? He's entirely based on Electro Charge, and he's not even good at it anymore because you don't need that much Electro application. Why? So yeah, that's my ideas for what I think 6.0 is going to bring. I really do. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if they added more 5 stars, but I would definitely, you know, hope that they become more generous with it. Because let's be real here, there is only a certain amount of, you know, free-to-play Primo gyms that people can get. And it's very possible that you just don't get lucky and get good characters. So it's very hard to. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.